Today, we will be building this simple, responsive, personal portfolio that you could put on your resume. We'll be going through in depth on how every single part of this website was made. The tech stack that is used for this project is Next.js 13, Tailwind CSS, and Vercel. Hi, my name is Hosna and welcome to this channel. I make weekly tech videos on new topics that I'm discovering and want to share with people. In the past few months, I've been looking into different front-end libraries and frameworks. I've tried different combinations of React, styled components, UI libraries such as Material UI, Ant Design, Chakra UI, and etc. I've tried Sass, but the one by far that's my favorite at the moment is Next.js and Tailwind CSS. I've been wanting to make this video for a while now. I feel that Tailwind CSS is a really big game changer for front-end development. It was a little bit intimidating to use it at first, but once I did, I didn't want to use anything else. So let's get started. Now, the first thing we are going to be doing is creating our project. I'll be using this starter project. You can find the link to this project in the description below. If you just want access to the final project, you could just switch to the final branch right here. However, we are going to be using the starter branch so we could go step by step on how everything is implemented. We are then going to open up a terminal and copy it onto our desktop. So it just finished cloning and I'll put it right here. You can then close the terminal and close the web browser and open this project up in VS Code. So we have our project now open up in VS Code. What we need to do is we need to do an npm install so we can install all of our packages and dependencies. Now once that's completed, we can now add our Tailwind CSS. Here is a documentation on how to install Tailwind CSS with Next.js. We can skip the first part because we already created our project. We want to go to the second part right here and copy this and put it inside a terminal. Once that's completed, you could copy the second line and do the same thing. Now, once we have installed those two lines, we should have two new files. The next thing we need to do is we need to add this section to our tailwind.config.js file. We are going to copy this and we are going to paste it inside here. Now, once we have pasted this section, the next thing we need to do is we need to go inside our globals.css and add this. So we are going to do that. I am going to replace all this code that's in here because I don't need it. So I'm gonna do all of it, delete it, and paste this. Now, once I've done that, I could go ahead and delete this file right here, the page.module.css. We don't need that. Now, in order to see if Tailwind has been installed, we can now go ahead and do an npm run dev. Now, if we open up our localhost, you'll see that we have some errors. Since we deleted that file, there's some cleaning up that we need to do. So you are first going to go to page. You are going to delete all of this at the top, and then you are going to take all of this and delete it and just do main and just return a hello world. So now when it renders again, we just have this. And if we want to test our Tailwind, do class name. If we want to make the text bigger, you just do text to Excel and it should have gotten bigger. So that means our Tailwind has been installed correctly. Before we begin coding, I'm going to be discussing on a high level what we are going to build. Here is a basic wireframe of a website layout. We got our header, we got our content section, which is our body, and we got our footer. Now in this tutorial, I'll be going section by section, building each of these parts one at a time. If you want to skip to any of these sections, feel free to use the YouTube timestamp. Now, the first thing that we are going to work on is our header. Here is a wireframe of what we specifically want to build. You see how we have both a desktop view and a mobile view. It's important to keep in mind responsivity when doing web development. Now, as you wireframe these sections out, you could start to visualize and think about what you're going to use when you're coding. Now we could go start to build it. To build our navbar, the first thing we are going to do is we are going to create a components folder. Inside that components folder, we are going to create a file called navbar.tsx. Once we have done that, we are going to use this shortcut to create a component for us. If you want to know the extension that I downloaded in order to use that shortcut, you could check it out in the description below. This is what the extension is. Now back to navbar. Once we have created our navbar component, we can add it to our layout. The first thing we need to do is we need to import it. So we need to import Navbar into our layout. Once we've done that, we just add it on top of this component. Now, once we've done that, we could see on the right side, Navbar has shown up. Now, if we go back to our wireframe, you see how we want there to be these items with this logo. So that's the first thing we're going to build. Go back to our Navbar component. There are a couple of things that we are going to need to import, and I am going to copy and paste it here. Since we are using TypeScript, we need to assign our Navbar items specific types. Next thing we are going to add is we are going to create a constant called nav items with this type that we just created. And inside of it, this is where we are going to create our items. Now, once we have all these set up, we could go inside here now. Inside here, the first thing we are going to do is we need to initialize a constant. We're going to make that equal to the use theme that we imported. We're going to create another constant, and that's going to be our current theme that we are using, and equal it to the current theme. It's going to be whatever the system is at currently. And if it's not, it's going to take the default value of system theme or the theme that it was assigned. The last constant we are going to create is our navbar. What this is controlling is whether the navbar is in mobile view or desktop view, and if it should be opened or not, and if the menu should be open or not, and you will see that. We are going to replace our div with header tags. Within the header, we are going to have one div and some nested divs within that div. The first nested div is going to contain our logo or our name. And for this div, what we are going to do is we are going to take our inputs from this constant right here and populate it. To do that, we are going to use a map function, as well as we're going to use our item label as of now. So then if we refresh this, then we should see our link show up. Now we want it to get to somewhere closer to here. So we are going to start doing that. First thing we need to do, we need to take the outer div. So once we do that, now we have our items shift to here, and we are getting closer to what we had here. We are going to first work on designing the logo. So here we want our text to be a little bit bigger, and we want our font to be bold. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to give the header a little bit more of a design. So we want to make sure that the width is full width. And when we are in dark mode, and we will not see that until we add our toggle just in a little bit. Now we are going to work on these items a little bit more. We're going to do a class name, flex. We're going to do MD. We want there to be a space between them. Now we are going to go back to this item right here. We are going to give it a little bit more of a padding. So now our navbar has a little bit more height. Now we can move forward with adding our toggle button to test out our light and dark mode to see if everything's okay. And this is how you do that. So one is going to show light, and then the other one's going to show a moon. We want to add some styling to our buttons. So to do that, we are going to do class name. All we need to do is add an onClick function to our button. We are going to set the theme to light. And we're going to do the same thing for the button below, and we are going to set that one to dark. Now, if we click on it, it doesn't work because we forgot to do one thing. We need to go to our layout page, and we need to add this one line, import theme provider. And we need to wrap our theme provider around our navbar and child components. And we need to do enable system, make it equal to true, as well as add the attribute of class. It's giving us an error right now that we need to use the use client in our layout. Once we've done that, now if we go back to navbar, we have set up our theme provider. If we click on it right now, we have done that. As you notice, the icon here isn't the correct color, so we need to go in and change that. as well as I want to make the size of the icon a little bit bigger. So to do that, we are going to do size equal to 25, making sure that the color is going to be black to 25. And we don't need to worry about the color for that one right now. So now when we click on it, so there we go, we got our light and dark mode. Next items that we are going to be working on is making sure that these items are hoverable and also responsive. Right now, if you try shrinking the page, this is what happens to our items. We need to surround this around another div. We are going to put this in there, as well as we are going to have another div within it. So inside this div, we are going to create a button. That button, depending on whether the navbar is true or false, we are going to show these icons, which we imported earlier. So as you see right now, we see this little drop down show up. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger. There we go, it's a little bit bigger now. Now I want this to be hidden when it is in desktop mode. To do that, all we need to do is go within the upper div, go to create class name, and make sure when it's at least at this size, that's gonna be hidden. However, then when we go to a smaller size, which I will right now, you see that it does show up again right here. We have to go to this div right here. We type in class name, make sure that that item is able to flex, make sure that the items are centered, make sure that they are justified between so that gives them space. There we go, we're getting a little bit closer. Now we want to make sure that these icons are hidden until we click this button. To do that, we have to go back down. We are going to wrap this div around another div within here. Now this div is going to have a class name. It's a little bit long, so I will copy and paste what I have. So this is the case. If the navbar is in mobile view, then the items will be hidden. Otherwise, they will be showing up on top of the navbar. And these are the settings to do all of that. However, now when I click on it, nothing happens. If I open it up again, if I close out of this inspection mode, we see that our items are there, but it doesn't look like the alignment is correct. To fix this alignment issue, we need to wrap this div around one more div. So to do that, we just do that. Copy this section right here. We needed to nest it. And once we do that, we see that our alignment is much better. I am going to add more padding at the top when we have a smaller screen. That's much better. We have better padding. Now, when we go back to inspect and try to resize our screen again, we still don't have our functionality yet, and we have to put that in. To do that, we are going to go back to here. We are going to add inside our button. When we click the button, which is our icon, we are going to perform this function, and we are going to set this navbar to whatever it is not. It's like a switch. Then when we click on it now, we see that our navbar opens. Now we can fix our items. To do that, we are going to go back to nav items. We are going to switch this for the link that we imported. I am going to delete this. I'm going to import that link. So there we go. So the label of our link will be the same what we had last time, item label. So we need all these parameters in order to have smooth scrolling, and we will see that in a minute. So now when we go back to our navbar, we see that there is better alignment with our items. So we see that there's not that much space in here, and we know that that's inside this div right here. So what we are going to do is we are going to do a space on the y-axis of 8. So default by this size is going to be 8. And then once we switch desktop mode, the alignment is off. So we got to make sure that when it goes to that mode, we are going to make the space Y0. So now if we check it, there we go, much smoother. So now we have a pretty responsive navbar. And if we click on our toggle, we can see that it switches to dark mode. Now that we've finished building our header, the next section we are going to be working on is the content. I have broken down our content area into 3 sections. we are going to have a home, about, and a project section. We are first going to build our home section. This is what the desktop view is going to look like. On our left, we're going to have a place for our image. And for the right, we are going to have some text. We are going to have an arrow in the middle to indicate to scroll down. And this arrow will also be animated. And this is what the view is going to look like in our mobile view. We are going to have the image at the top. We're going to have our text in the middle. And we're going to have the arrow on the bottom. Now that we know how we want our home section to look like, we could start developing it. In order to create our home section, what we are going to do is we are going to navigate into the components folder and we are going to create a file called hero section. Now our hero section is going to act as our home section. Once we got that, we can generate a already made function. Then we could import it into our page. We import hero section. Then we go inside here and we type, we don't see anything yet. So what we want to do is we need to add some style to our main class. And to do that, I'm going to paste it. The next thing we want to do is go back to hero section and we are going to replace div with the section tag. And once we added section, what we are going to do is we are going to add an ID of home. So this is how the Navbar is going to know where to scroll when we click on home. Next, we are going to be creating a div. Within that div, we are going to have two other divs to represent our image and our text box. So we will create two more divs. Within the first div, we are going to need to import image from Next.js. So we're going to import it and then bring it here. Now the source where we are getting that from is we get that from this public folder. Now I don't have my image in here. I am going to copy and paste it in and I just call it headshot. And what you are going to do is once it's in that public folder, you do backslash the name of the photo and then it should show up when you refresh it. Now you see how it's not styled yet and we'll get to that in a second. Then in the next div, that's where we want our text. So we are going to start creating our headings. Next, underneath here, I am going to create a paragraph. And then underneath the paragraph, I am going to be including a link that will go to my projects. And let me import link. We see that we're getting this error. Make sure to include the use client at the top. And then once you do, it should show up correctly. And then from there, we should be good. So we could then start styling. The first thing we're gonna focus on is our upper div. We're gonna do class name. We're gonna do flex. I wanna make sure that our text is centered. Then I think we are good for that. Then we want to go to our image, class name, fully rounded. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to go inside here and add some style to our heading. And I think we are good for that. In our paragraph, we want to add some style there. And I think we should be good there. And we already have our class for our link. So this is the styles that are, so this is the style that our current button has. If you want to take a look at it, get rid of this. If you hover over it, it changes its color. Now we want to include our little arrow on the bottom. So to do that, we're going to create a div outside of that div. Then we are going to add a link. Once we add the link with the icon, we need to import the icon. So I imported it from React Icons, and once we do, it shows up here. We see that it isn't centered. And in order to center it, we need to do class, do flex, flex row, and then justify center. And then we get our arrow in the center. Currently, we are in mobile view. So this is what it'll look like if it's on your phone. However, when we go back to desktop view, it doesn't really look that nice. So we have to design for that. When we are in desktop view, we want to make sure that our outer div is not in a flex column, but in flex row. We want to make sure that everything's in a row. To do that, we do md flex row, and then you'll see everything is side by side. And then the next thing you want to do is we want to give some space between these two. So we're going to do md space x4. So there's some space. You can't see it really yet, but you will see in a second. And then we also want our text to be aligned left when it's in this one. So there we go. Now we need to make sure that the width of our containers are sized nicely. To do that, we go to class name. The width is going to be 1/2, as well as we're going to give a little bit of a margin at the top. We're going to make sure the margin top is 2. And then we have to do the same thing for this div right here. We're going to do class name, margin top 2, width. It's getting there. I want the text to be a little bit bigger when we are in this mode. So to do that, we're going to do text 7XL, as well as get rid of the margin on the top. The bottom text to be a little bit bigger. So we're going to do text 2XL. Now I feel this section is really close to the top. So I want some space between the section and the navbar. To do that, we are going to go back here, make sure that when we are in this mode, we are going to make sure that we are going to have a padding of, let's try 52. So that's a lot better. It's a little bit lower. And then when I am in a smaller size, I might use something in between, like padding in the y-axis to be 32. So that looks a lot better. Now I'm going to add some animation. I want to make this arrow bounce. To do that, what we need to do is we need to go to our Tailwind config.js file, and we need to add some items here. In order to add animation, we are going to go inside extend. We are going to type animation. We are going to name what our animation is called. For now, we'll call it bounce. I'm going to leave it empty. Then right underneath animation, we need to create keyframes. I'm going to paste it in. It's going to be called bounce. Inside bounce, I am going to copy it here. I am referencing this keyframe. This is the name of the animation that I want to use. It's going to alternate, meaning it's going to reverse its direction. This is the smoothness of what it's going to be. And infinite means that it's going to do it forever. So now this is not going to work because we changed our Tailwind config file. We have to stop our program and we have to rerun it to recognize the changes we made. We're going to refresh the page. And right now it's not doing anything because we don't have it inside our code. So we have to go back here and we're going to go inside our hero section. And inside our icon, we are going to add class name and we are going to call animate bounce, what we just created. So now when the page re-renders, we see that our arrow is bouncing. You can see what it looks like when it's in mobile mode. And that is it for the home section. Once we've finished our home section, the next section we're going to be working on is the about section. This is what the desktop view is going to look like. We're going to have 2 columns of text. We are going to have 2 columns of text. One column is going to be called Get to Know Me section, and the column to the right is going to have our skills. How our mobile view is going to look like is that these 2 sections will be stacked on top of each other. Now that we have a high-level idea of what we want our About section to look like, we can start building it. To create the About section, we are going to go back to Components and create a file called About Section. Then we are going to do the same thing and create our function. We are going to import it into our page, similar to how we did with hero section. Once it's imported, you can put it right beneath hero section. And we have just added our About section. As you see, it shows up right here. I'm going to put this window back to mobile view. Then from here, we are going to change our div into section. And then once we do that, we are going to add ID about. And then within our section, we are going to go through the same process that we went for our hero section. We are going to have a bunch of nested divs. Our first nested div, in our div, we are going to have a title and we are going to name it About Me. And then underneath that, we are going to create another div, which is going to contain our items. Inside our first div, we are going to input the information that we are going to be using. We're going to have a heading, and we're going to have a paragraph. And it's going to be the same thing for the other div. Our heading is going to be called Get to Know Me. And then inside our paragraph, I'm going to copy some information. And then right underneath that paragraph, I want another paragraph, but I want there to be a space between it. So to do that, we're going to do a break. And then I am going to copy the rest of the paragraphs that I have. So this is all the information that I want to include. And this is our information without it really being styled yet. Then for our next section, for this section, we are going to name it My Skills. And then I am going to leave this paragraph blank for now. So now we can start styling. I want to make sure that this header is in the center. So to do that, I'm going to do class name. So there we go. It's getting somewhere. The next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that this outer div is going to be able to flex. It's going to be both flex column. And then when we are in desktop mode, we are going to do flex row, which we just did right now. You saw my skills brought to the side, the two divs, right? We have two divs, this one and this one. If I go back to mobile view, I want some space in between these sections, space Y, maybe 10. So now we have some space right here. Then from there, I am going to be using item stretch. So both of the divs are the same height when we go back to desktop mode. Make sure everything's justified in the center. Going to make sure everything is aligned at the top. And then once we go into desktop mode, I want to make sure that everything is left aligned, as well as there's some padding, and that the space that we included is not there anymore. And the space in between the sections now are on the x-axis. So there we go for that. Now we need to configure the width for each one of these boxes. So we're going to do class name for each. Make sure that the width when it's on desktop mode is both 1/2. So now that they're both 1/2, there's still not enough equal padding on the side. So inside our outermost div, we are going to do a Y margin of 12 and some padding in the bottom as well. Now I want to style our heading, and I am going to be copying this class. So we want to make sure that the text is in the center, that our font size is bigger, that it's bold, and that there's some margin in between the heading and the paragraph. Class for our skills. So there we go, we got two of our headings. Now, once we got that, we are going to add some of our skills. To do that, we are going to create a constant outside of the function called skills. It's going to be an array of dictionaries. And within the dictionary, we are just going to call it skill. We're going to have a string, for example, HTML. And I have a bunch I will be copying. So here are all the skills I want to include. Now, if I go back to my skills section, we are going to wrap this paragraph around a div. And within this div, we are going to be using our mapping function. We are going to be mapping the skills array that we just created. We are going to make sure that we are returning paragraph. We have an item and we have an index. We are going to make a unique key for each paragraph, as well as we are going to be putting the name of the skill. So now if we go back down, we see this is the list that we just created at the top here. And in order to do that, we are going to create a class name within paragraph. And this is the styling that I would like to follow. We're gonna have a background of gray. We're gonna have some padding and the text be semi-bold. Now you see it still doesn't look that great. Since this is inside a div, what we can do is we could do flex, and then we want to make sure that we are able to wrap our paragraphs. We want them to be in a row. We want to make sure that they are justified center, as well as have a justify start when we are in desktop mode. So now that looks a lot better. And the last fun thing that I want to add is there's some white space right here. I wanted to add an image. And to add an image there, what we need to do is we need to import image. Once we have imported our image, we're going to go beneath this div and call image. We need to make sure we have our source. I am going to add our image here. I named it about image. So then if we go back here, do a / about image. Now if we go down, we should see our image is right there. Now I'm going to add some styling to it. So when it's in desktop mode, it will be shown, but once I change it to mobile view, then it will be hidden. I'm going to make the image a little bit bigger. And there we go, we just added our image. Now to double check if our mobile view looks correct, we are going to go to inspect. Now we see that this is a little bit too close to the about me. Also, it's a little bit hard to differentiate what's the title. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a line right underneath about me. And that line is going to be colored so it can add some style to the page as well. And to do that, I'm going to go inside my heading 1 and then add it right here. And once I do that, and I add some space between my subtitle right here. And then if we go back into desktop mode, we have that nicely shown right here. And to show that this arrow works, we're going to click on this arrow and it scrolls down to this about me section, which is pretty awesome. So that is it for this about me section. The last section we are going to be working on is our project section. This is where we are going to display what projects we've worked on. In our desktop view, we are going to have an image of our project and a couple words describing it and our links to the project. If we have more than one project, they will be stacked on top of each other. In our mobile view, our image is going to be on our top and our text is going to be on the bottom. And then each project will be stacked on top of each other like so. Now that we have an idea of how our project section is going to look like, we can begin to code it. To build our project section, we are going to do the same thing that we did with the about section. We're going to go inside components and create a project section file. Next, we are going to do RAFCE. We are going to import it inside page. Then we are going to add it right underneath the about section. Once we have done that, we could go down and we can see project section has showed up. We are going to import a couple items at the top right here. Then I am going to import some data that I will be using in our section. It is similar to what we did for the skill section. It is an array of dictionaries that has some information of a couple projects that I've done. Now we could go inside the project section. We are going to change our div to section, and we are going to add our ID and name it projects. From there, we are going to create a header. And the style of our heading, we want it to be the same as the about me. So what we can do is we could go back to the about me section, copy actually this H1, paste it here, and replace the about me with projects. We are going to add a div right underneath that and give it a class name with these parameters. Then we are going to map the items in the array, and that is going to be another div. We have our project and we have our index. Each div is going to have a key of index. Then within our div, we are going to have another div that is going to have two nested divs. This outermost div will have a class name. Once we do that, then we could go inside the first div. We are going to be adding an image inside here. That's going to be the image of our project. I'm just going to copy and paste it. And then in both of the divs, we are going to have a width of 1/2. So let me add class name here. We can see what it looks like so far. In terms of our images, I haven't added it to the project yet, so I will go ahead and do that. So I just added my images and it should show up if I refresh. So these are the images that I have. This div right here represents this text box right here. And we just added our image. So for the text box, we want there to be an H1 tag with the project name. And you get this key from the dictionary right here. So that is one item, and we see that it showed up right here. I am going to style it right now. Add class name, here's the style that I want. From there, we are going to add a paragraph right beneath it, and we are going to make the project description go there. And the class name and the parameters I want associated with that is going to be this. It's going to have a text size of XL. It's going to be leading 7, which is the space in between the lines, and that's the color. After that, I want to add 2 buttons underneath here. One that directs you to GitHub and the other one that directs you to the website and a demo. To do that, we are going to create a div. And within that div, we are going to create 2 links. So we imported link earlier. We're going to do 2 links. And then within here, we are going to do an href to the project.github, the project. So the link is to the demo. Then we want to make sure that it opens up a new page. So we have to add target_blank, just like that. And we are going to add our icons. So the icon that we are going to be adding for GitHub is this. And then if we go down to the project section, we could see that the GitHub icon just showed up and it has a little bit of an animation right here. We're going to do the same thing for this section right here. This is the icon that I'm going to be using. And as you can see, currently they are stacked on top of each other. So inside our div that we created, we're going to add flex row, and we are going to align them to the bottom. And we are going to give them some space in between each other, space of 4. So we got our 2 buttons right now. So I noticed that the project is really close to the tile right here. So I'm gonna add some margin in between there. I'm gonna do margin top 12, and then the image have a margin top of 8. So there we go, we have some more space. Now if you notice, when we hover over this link, if we click on it, it doesn't do anything, but I think it would be nice. So if we click on it, it takes us directly to the demo. And all you need to do is wrap the link around the image, like that, and then make sure that the href is going to the projects.link, similar to the one below, and then we are going to have our target equal _blank. So then when we click on it, it redirects us to the website. Now that we've added our projects, we could add some animation to it. And to do so, we need to go to the tailwind.config file. We are going to add a slide up keyframe, and then right underneath animation for bounce, we are going to add another line called slide up QB Beezer. So this gives us the motion of the project sliding up as we pass each project. Now, in order to do this, we need to reference where the project is at according to the page. Now, to do that, we need to go inside components, and we need to create a new file called slide up. And I'm going to be pasting some code in here, which you can get access to on GitHub in my final repository. But essentially, this is just taking the location of where the mouse and the cursor is at and adjusting the properties and applying the animation. Once we've added that, and inside our projects file, we are going to import slide up. And once you have it imported, you are going to put it right underneath this div. And we're going to call it slide up. Slide up has a parameter of offset, and we are going to do an offset of 300 px. We're going to close it. We're going to take the ending tag, and we are going to put it at the end of this div, right underneath here. Once we do that, we need to add our animation into our code. Right underneath slide up in the first div, we're going to do animate and the name that we named our animation, which is called slide up QB Beezer. Then we are going to add animation delay by 2. Now, if your program is running right now, I would stop it and then rerun it, because we made some changes to the Tailwind config file and sometimes it doesn't recognize it unless you restart it. So we restarted it. I'm going to refresh the page. Then if we go down, now we see we have this smooth animation. Now the last project isn't showing because we haven't reached that area yet. And we will once we add our footer, which is what we are going to do right now because we are done with our project section. Now that we finished our content, the last thing we'll be working on is our footer. This is what our desired footer will look like. In our desktop view, we will have our logo with our copyright on the left side, and on the right side, we are going to have some social media buttons. Now in our mobile view, these two items will be stacked rather than have space between them. Now that we have an idea of what our footer is going to look like, now we could go and build it. So to create our footer, we need to go back inside our components folder and create our footer file. Once we have, then we could create a function. Then we could go inside our layout and we are going to be importing footer, and we are going to place the footer right underneath the child. Now once we've done that, we can see our footer has showed up here. There are a couple icons that I want to include. And we are going to change this div to footer. And then within the footer, I want some sort of border at the top. So similar to what we did here, I'm going to use that same approach to draw a line for our footer. However, we don't have that much space. So we want to add this class name to our footer as well. So then we could have some padding. Once we've done that, we want to create a div. And within that div, like always, we are going to have some nested divs. Now these divs are going to represent these sections of the footer. This will be one div, the social buttons, and this will be another div right here. And then once we go into mobile view, they will collapse into one column like this. Now to do that, our first div will contain this text right here. This is our first piece of text. And as you can see, it just showed up right here on the bottom. So once we have that, we are also going to include our icons. Now our icons are going to be wrapped in an A tag, and they are going to have a specific class. I'll just copy the A tags with the icons inside here. Now if we go back here, we see that they're in a column. We want them to flex. So in order to do that, we need to go back to the upper div and add some styles to it. We're going to do an MX auto, as well as we're going to justify space between. Now we are going to see that right now, right here. So you see that we got some space between and everything is in a row. Now we have to do some layout fixes for this right here, for our social buttons. So we are going to go inside our div. We're going to do a class name. We are going to make sure that it flexes, and we make sure that it flexes into a row. Our items are going to be in the center. We're going to make sure that it's justified in the center as well. And then that there's space between them, about 2. And then we're going to make sure that there's a little bit of a margin bottom. Now we have a better looking footer. If we go to inspect and we see this mode, you see our navbar is looking good as well here. I'm going to be adding some color to our copyright name. And I think besides that, we should be good. And that should be it for the footer. Now for some last housekeeping tips, we see that at the top of our browser, it says create next app. In order to change that, we are going to go inside our file explorer and going to go inside head. And then within here, we could change it to whatever we want. So I want to change it to my name. And once we do that and we refresh, it changes to my name. Also, another thing I wanted to change was the little icon right here. I wanted to give it some sort of emoji. There's a way by replacing this link right here, the fave icon, with this one right here. So let me zoom out a little bit. It is this href right here, and if you do that and you include your emoji that you find online, it should show up right here. And this code is available on my GitHub if you want to use it. As well as one more thing, I noticed that this name right here is not a clickable name. In order to resolve that issue, we could just go to our navbar. Now that we're in the navbar, we can make this logo clickable by wrapping our link around this div right here, around this div, and we are going to make it go to our home if we ever click it. So now it should be clickable if we refresh the page. Now we can test out this project, right? If I click on About, I should be able to go to the About page, and if I click on the projects, I should go to Projects. If I click on this button, I should toggle in and out of dark mode. Now we see that this color is different from this navbar color. What we need to do is we need to go inside our layout and make sure that the body of our layout is the same as the one that we assigned it to our navbar. By default, it will give this black color. So we want to change that default. And in order to do that, we are going to add a class name to the body. So we could do that right here. And once we do that, it should refresh to the same color. Now, after testing our light and dark mode, it seems like that's good. The next thing we are going to do is we are going to deploy our website. To do that, we are going to be using Vercel. If you don't have an account with Vercel already, you could create a free account. I'm going to log into my account and show you the process of how to upload a new project. Now, once you are on the dashboard page, you are going to click Add New Project. Once you're here, make sure that you have your repository already uploaded onto GitHub. And then you are going to select the repository and import it. Once you're here, you are going to press on Deploy. It takes a few minutes for your website to get deployed. Now, once it's done deploying, you should be able to visit the website by clicking this button. You can change the domain if you want to by going to Settings and going to Domain. You can add your own custom domain if you want to. For now, I'm just going to change this to my first name and saving it and then opening it up. So nice. We got our fully deployed portfolio. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, go check out the other videos that I have here on this channel. And like always, if you have any questions or any topics that you want me to do a video on, just leave it in the comment section below. And I'll see you next time.